At first, the neighbors thought it was a joke, just a parrot doing what parrots do. But when the bird kept screaming help, please, someone help him, for hours, someone finally called the police. What they found inside the house wasn't funny at all. It was the kind of thing that makes you question, can animals really know when we're in danger? The sun had barely broken over the rooftops of Maplewood Lane when the screams started. Not human screams, not at first glance, but something that pierced the morning silence with an eerie, desperate clarity. Help! Help me! Please help! Mrs. Ellen Delgado, pouring her first cup of coffee in the kitchen next door, froze mid-pour. The words were sharp, clear, and unmistakably terrified. Her first thought? A child, maybe one of the neighbor's kids, playing a cruel game before school. But as she stepped outside onto her porch in her slippers, robe cinched tight against the October chill, her gut told her otherwise. There was something about the tone, too consistent, too frantic, to be a prank. The sound came from house number 14, Mr. Raymond Porter's place. Quiet man, retired, kept to himself, and he lived alone, well, except for his parrot, Max. She remembered him now. That brilliantly feathered African gray who used to shout, "Good morning," every time she watered her garden. Funny bird. Sharp. Maybe too sharp. But this wasn't a joke. The screams were repeating. Please. Somebody. Help me. By 8:15 a.m., 2 more neighbors had stepped out into their front yards, eyes scanning Raymond's tightly drawn blinds. Mr. Chun across the street waved his phone. You hearing this? He asked, brow furrowed. Sounds like someone's hurt, but no one saw movement inside. No cars, no signs of Raymond, who usually rolled out the trash bins like clockwork. By 7:30, the street, often filled with suburban calm, lawn mowers, joggers, barking dogs, was now dead still, except for the chilling repetition of Max's cries. And then it stopped. For 5 long minutes, there was nothing but wind in the trees and a distant leaf blower. Mrs. Delgado felt her stomach turn. Had she imagined it? Just as doubts started to settle in, the voice came again, more strained this time. Help me, please. But this time it wasn't Max. It was deeper, ragged, fainter, human. Something was very wrong inside their house. Max had always been a talker. From the moment Raymond brought him home as a young bird nearly 12 years ago, the African gray had filled the silence of the modest Maplewood home with an endless stream of chirps, clicks, whistles, and phrases. Over time, he had learned to perfectly mimic Raymond's voice, down to the sleepy mutterings of "Where'd I leave my glasses?" and the sarcastic, "Well, that's just brilliant." Raymond, a retired history teacher, had never married. Max became his family, his companion, his routine. They ate meals together, watched evening news side by side, and even argued. Or rather, Max would echo Raymond's grumbles, throwing his own voice back at him like a mirror with wings. He wasn't just smart. He was emotionally intelligent, sensitive, observant, a silent guardian in feathers. But that Thursday morning, Max's usual antics had changed. Instead of random phrases or jokes, he began repeating one thing, over and over. Help me. Please help me. At first, he said it calmly, as if rehearsing, practicing a new phrase he'd picked up. But as the hours passed, his tone changed, urgency replacing rhythm, desperation bleeding into mimicry. It was no longer imitation. It was communication. He paced his perch, fluttered his wings, and screamed into the silence. What he had seen no one else could. When Raymond collapsed just past 6 a.m., Max was the only one there. One moment Raymond was sipping tea in his recliner. The next, the cup fell, the remote clattered to the floor, and Raymond's body slumped sideways, one hand clawing the air, the other pressed to his chest. Max screeched, flapped, flew to the floor. But Raymond didn't move. Instinct kicked in, not the wild, primal instinct of jungle birds, but something nurtured over years of cohabitation, something deeper than mimicry. He began screaming the only words he knew might make someone come. Help! Help him! Please! He perched on the curtain rod, scanning the windows, repeating himself louder with every minute. Then silence, watching, listening. When no one came, Max tried again. He screamed with the voice of his human, A cry stolen from television dramas and emergency alerts. But this time it wasn't for play. It was real. Outside, neighbors debated what they were hearing. Inside, Max screamed with feathers ruffled and wings clenched. And somewhere, buried beneath the weight of a stroke and the blur of unconsciousness, Raymond heard it. That familiar voice, broken and urgent. Help, please. Help me. Raymond's fingers twitched. The bond between man and bird had never needed words, just recognition. And now, Max was doing what no machine, no doorbell, no fall detector could do. He was raising the alarm. His way. What no one outside yet understood was this. Max wasn't repeating something he had heard. He was repeating something he had learned to save for this very moment. By 3:15 p.m., the unease had turned into full-blown tension on Maplewood Lane. A small group of neighbors had gathered across the street from Raymond Porter's house, arms folded tightly, murmuring in confusion. The blinds remained drawn. The porch light, oddly, was still on from the night before. No mail had been picked up, and still the voice. Help, please. Somebody, help him. The calls came every few minutes now, then stopped, then came again, like a haunting echo. The more they heard it, the more chilling it became. No one had seen Raymond since yesterday afternoon. He hadn't answered the door when Mr. Chun tried knocking. And now, even the teenagers who once joked about the talking bird were silent. Ellen Delgado couldn't take it anymore. Her hands trembled as she unlocked her phone and dialed 911. She hesitated when the operator picked up. This might sound strange, she began, but there's a Parrot, and he's screaming for help. He lives with an elderly man, and none of us have seen him all day. The operator paused, the kind of pause that says this isn't in the manual. But Ellen's voice was insistent. Something's wrong. I just know it. I don't think the Parrot's just talking. I think he's trying to warn us. The dispatcher took her details, verified the address, and promised to send a welfare check. 20 minutes later, a black and white patrol car pulled up outside house number 14. Officers Monica Reyes and Kyle Turner were dispatched that afternoon on what was marked in the system as a welfare concern, possible medical emergency. When they stepped out of the cruiser, they expected an elderly man with a fall, or perhaps a misunderstanding. What they didn't expect was to be greeted by an animal yelling louder than either of them had ever heard from a pet. Help! Help me! Please! They looked at each other. That's the bird, Reyes asked, eyebrows raised. Apparently, Turner replied, stepping up to the porch. He knocked firmly. Silence. Reyes cupped her hands against the glass to peer through the side window. All she saw was shadows, no lights on inside, just the vague outline of furniture, and the persistent, frantic cry of a parrot, just out of sight. They knocked again, then again. That's when they heard it, a low, garbled groan from deep inside the house. Not the bird, not a recording. It was faint but unmistakable, a human voice. Did you hear that? Reyes said, stepping back. Turner didn't answer. He was already reaching for the door handle. Locked. Protocol said wait. Call in. Get backup. But instinct, the same kind that had brought Ellen to call and Max to cry out, took over. Turner radioed it in. Dispatch. We've got potential non-responsive occupant at 347 Maplewood. Unknown medical. Requesting permission to enter. Permission granted. And as Reyes moved to the back to check for alternate entry, Turner stepped forward, drew a breath, and kicked in the door. What waited inside would shake them both. The door cracked open with a sharp bang, the wood splintering at the lock as Officer Turner forced his way inside. The stale air that rushed out smelled faintly of brewed tea gone cold, dust, and something else. Metallic medical wrong. Maplewood PD. Turner called out. His voice echoed through the dim interior. There was no response. Not from any person anyway. But from the far end of the living room came a sudden screech. Help him, please. It was Max. The parrot was perched high on the curtain rod, wings flared, feathers ruffled, eyes wild with panic. He fluttered once, squawking louder when the officers entered. This wasn't the usual showy bird call. It was urgent, piercing, desperate. He was trying to tell them something, and he wouldn't stop. Raymond Porter? Officer Reyes called. Entering from the back door she'd unlocked. Her flashlight swept over picture frames, bookshelves, a tipped-over chair. "We're here to help." Then she saw him. Raymond Porter lay crumpled beside the coffee table. His face was pale, mouth slightly open, eyes flickering but unfocused. One hand was curled beneath him, the other stretched toward the floor lamp, as if he'd tried to pull himself up. He had collapsed hours ago, possibly before sunrise. Beside him, a shattered mug of tea had stained the carpet. The TV remote lay cracked in two. There were scratch marks on the wood floor, tiny lines. From Max? It was hard to say. Reyes knelt beside Raymond, immediately checking his pulse. "Faint, but alive," she said, reaching for her radio. "Subject is male, approximately 70 years old, unresponsive, breathing shallow, suspected stroke or fall, requesting EMT immediately." Turner moved quickly, clearing space as Reyes checked Raymond's airway and vital signs. Max, meanwhile, began pacing, repeating with rising intensity, "Help him! Help him! Wake up!" The officers exchanged glances. "You think he saw the whole thing?" Turner whispered, motioning to the bird. "He knows," Reyes replied. As they waited for medics, Reyes noticed something curious. On the windowsill sat a weathered notepad, open to a page where Raymond had scribbled, "Max, help me. Call for help. Somebody help. Practice for emergencies." Her heart tightened. Raymond had trained Max, not just to talk, but to alert, to perform phrases in case of danger. It wasn't mimicry. It was a plan. One Raymond must have started long ago, probably as a joke, or maybe, just maybe, as a lifeline. And today it had worked. Within minutes, paramedics arrived. As they stabilized Raymond and loaded him onto a stretcher, Max flew across the room and landed on the back of the recliner, watching intently, as if standing guard. Then softer, almost like a whisper, "I got you. I got you." And in that moment, everyone in the room stopped. Even the seasoned paramedics, used to chaos and crisis, looked at the bird and understood. This was no ordinary pet. This was a partner, a protector, a parrot who had broken the silence and possibly saved a life. As the paramedics rushed Raymond Porter to the ambulance, the officers remained inside to secure the home. Officer Reyes lingered by the recliner, eyes still fixed on the parrot, who had refused to leave his post. Max stared back, but he wasn't just watching. He was alert, focused. It was as if his job wasn't done yet. Turner moved through the house, checking rooms one by one, mostly out of routine. There didn't seem to be any foul play. No signs of a break-in. No medications scattered around. Just a home frozen in time, with one old man down and one parrot screaming for someone to notice. Then something caught his eye. In the hallway near Raymond's bedroom, a small plastic container lay cracked open on the floor. Pills were scattered like seeds, some still inside, some crushed beneath the heel of a slipper. Next to it, a tipped-over walker. "Reyes," Turner called. "Come take a look at this." She joined him silently. The pieces fell into place fast. Raymond had been reaching for his medication, likely his daily dose of blood thinners. He must have collapsed while getting them, stumbled backward, hit the hallway wall, and fallen. The walker had rolled just out of reach. The container hit the floor, and Max had watched the entire thing unfold from his perch near the kitchen. Suddenly, Reyes remembered something else. The note in the living room. "Max, help me. Call for help. Somebody help. Practice for emergencies." He hadn't just said it on instinct. Raymond trained him to say it, in case something happened. She went back to the windowsill where the note lay. Flipping the page, she found more scribbles. One read, "If I fall, Max will know. Teach him, help him. Teach, call 911 next." There were dates, months back, tracking Max's progress. Check marks. Notes like, "Max used help today when tea spilled." Smart boy. Raymond had been preparing. No medical alert device. No voice-activated assistant. Just Max. A bird with the intelligence of a toddler and the loyalty of a son. And now, here he was, not only having recognized distress, but having used the words he had been taught exactly when they were needed most. Reyes felt a chill rise in her arms. This wasn't just a quirky story. This was history. A life-saving act. A trained emergency response. from a bird most people assumed was just background noise. She looked at Max, who cocked his head and muttered softly, "Good boy, Max, good boy." It wasn't praise. It was a memory. He was repeating Raymond's voice, something the old man must have said to him over and over again after each training session. A reward, a ritual, a reminder that they were in this together. Suddenly, Max flapped his wings and flew to the front window. He perched on the sill, watching the ambulance drive off, and for the first time in hours, he was quiet. The hospital room was quiet, save for the rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor and the soft murmur of a television in the background. It had been 4 days since Raymond Porter was admitted, and though he hadn't spoken yet, his vitals had stabilized. Nurses came and went, checking charts, adjusting IVs, but still no words. Doctors believed the stroke had affected his speech and mobility, but his eyes told another story. Alert, responsive, present. He blinked with recognition when familiar faces entered. His hand twitched faintly when they mentioned Max. The staff had never seen so many visitors ask about a parrot. The story had spread like wildfire. Parrot screams save elderly man's life. Bird calls for help. Police find owner collapsed. Feathered first responder. Max the parrot goes viral. Local news picked it up. Then national. Animal behaviorists debated whether it was instinct, learned behavior, or some combination of both. But for the people who knew Raymond and those who had stood in his living room that day, the conclusion was simple. Max was a hero. He didn't just repeat sounds, he understood them. He didn't just talk, he acted. While Raymond lay in the hospital, his neighbors rallied. Mrs. Delgado volunteered to feed Max Mr. Chin, help clean the house, and make space for a medical bed in case Raymond needed one when he returned. A local animal trainer even stopped by to observe Max and confirmed what everyone already believed. This bird isn't just mimicking. He responded with intent. That's incredibly rare. For days after being admitted, Raymond finally stirred. He tried to speak, but only rasped. A nurse leaned in gently. "You're safe now, Mr. Porter. Do you know where you are?" His lips moved, cracked and dry, barely audible. He whispered, "Max." It was the only word he could push out. The hospital made arrangements that same day. The next morning, Max arrived in a travel cage, covered with a light blanket to keep him calm. When the sheet was lifted in the hospital room, Raymond's eyes brightened in a way the nurses hadn't seen yet. His hand trembled slightly, a small gesture, but enough. Max flapped his wings and squawked once before perching on the chair beside the bed. He looked directly at Raymond and tilted his head. Then, in that soft, familiar voice, "Hey, buddy, I got you." The room fell silent. Raymond wept, silently, with tears rolling down his cheeks. Max inched closer, nuzzling against the man's hand. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't dramatic. But it was reunion. It was gratitude. It was survival. Not everyone gets a second chance. Raymond Porter did, because his best friend never gave up. The story of Max, the African gray parrot who saved his owner's life, didn't fade away after Raymond left the hospital. It grew. News stations reached out for interviews. Animal advocacy groups sent letters of admiration. One local journalist dubbed Max the feathered first responder, and the name stuck. Even school children wrote letters and drew pictures of a cape wearing parrot squawking help in giant bubble letters. But for Raymond Porter, it wasn't about fame. It was about the quiet, sacred connection between a man and the only living being who had ever truly understood him without needing to be asked. Back at home, things were different now. A hospital bed had replaced the old recliner. Rails lined the bathroom. Meals were delivered instead of cooked. And yet, Raymond smiled more. Max had returned to his favorite perch by the window, though he rarely repeated his famous phrase anymore. It was as if he knew the crisis had passed. Visitors came often, neighbors bringing groceries, reporters requesting sound bites. Raymond declined most interviews, but made one exception, a live segment for a local animal rescue program. He insisted Max be beside him. When the interviewer asked, "Did you ever think your parrot would be the reason you're still alive?" Raymond chuckled softly, voice still weak, but full of warmth. "Max wasn't just repeating words," he said. "He was telling a story. He saw me on the floor, helpless, and he used the only tools I gave him to save me. That's not mimicry. That's love. Max let out a single whistle, low, warm, almost proud. After the interview aired, donations flooded into the local animal shelter in Max's name. A national pet brand sent Raymond a care packet and offered Max a lifetime supply of food and treats. One behavioral science group even asked permission to study Max, not as a test subject, but as a case study in interspecies emergency response. But Raymond declined. Max had done enough. He didn't need to prove anything. Instead, Raymond wrote a letter, published in the town paper, encouraging others to see their pets not as accessories, but as partners. They're listening, even when we're not. They're learning from us, and sometimes they're the only ones who will speak when we cannot. In the weeks that followed, Raymond's strength returned slowly. He began using a walker. He fed Max by hand again. The two would sit by the window every morning, watching life go by, an old man and his parrot, bound by more than words. People still came by now and then, hoping to hear Max shout, "Help!" But Max had said what needed to be said. He had fulfilled his mission, and in the quiet that followed, he found peace, watching over Raymond not as a pet, but as a guardian, a hero, the one nobody expected. If this story moved you, take a moment to look at the animals in your life a little differently. They're not just listening, they're watching, learning, and waiting for their chance to show us how much they truly care. Subscribe to this channel for more real stories like Max's, stories that remind us. Heroes don't always wear capes, sometimes they wear feathers. Tell us in the comments, what's the smartest or most emotional thing your pet has ever done?